Hello residents of MeepleTown, welcome to Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia, where we will take on the roles of low-level managers who have discovered the awful truths about our dystopian society. And we have a choice. We can stick around and try to beat the system from within, or we can leave. So we have decided to stay to build a better society. So let's get to the table and look at Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. So first thing that we're going to do is roll our dice, and we're going to compare our numbers, and whoever has the highest number is going to be the one who starts first.
It's definitely you this time.
7 total. So the first thing that I'm going to do is place my dice over here on the farm. So there's different worker placement spots on the board, and in this particular case, I place a level 4 over here, and if I place it in the 1 to 4 spot, if that's what the total is over here, I'm going to take a food, and then I'll move up on the Wastelander track. Now, we also both start off with 2 recruits, one that's visible and one that is not, until we're able to flip it later on.
We know what they are. Our opponents don't know
Our opponents do not. In this case, I have Sir Scarby the Harvester.
Scarby. I didn't know pirates were in the dystopian future.
He says that when you place a worker on the farm, if that worker has the highest knowledge, or he's alone, which that case I am alone, I can either lose one of my knowledge track, or I can gain an extra food. In this case, I will go ahead and gain an extra food because I want the commodities, right? I want to have the good resources.
All right, well, I'm going to come over to the generator, and one of the reasons I'm going to do that is because it says when you place a worker on the generator, if you have no cards in hand, which are these cards right here, I do not have any in my hand, I also gain a food. So I'm going to get my 1 energy because I've rolled a 2, so I would fall into this category. I'm going to move up on the Euphorian track, and so we basically did pretty
much the exact
similar
same thing. We both got an extra commodity, which was really nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to turn my commodity into a resource. So what I will do is I'll come down here and place my worker on the Wastelander tunnel spot, and I'll put that there, and I'll have to pay the cost in that gray box, so I'll pay a food. In this case, I can either gain a brick or a card. I'll just go ahead and take a brick because I'm going to need that potentially here in just a little bit.
Oh, you're going to kind of show, kind of tell me what you're going to do, I bet, huh? All right, so I am going to go here, and we're going to add up the pips on all the dice that are in this area, which is, I think that's kind of a cool mechanic.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 plus 2, so instead of getting a 4, because there's a 3, it's actually adding them together, which puts me in 5. I'm going to get another lightning bolt. I'm also going to get some more food because of my worker here. And then I'm going to get to go down and make my workers, almost did yours there. Make my workers a little more mindless, which is a good thing.
All right, so one thing I forgot to mention before I take my turn is when I took the Wastelander tunnel action, I actually should have moved this guy down a little bit, because once this moves down here, it's going to open up an extra spot if you have a revealed Wastelander recruit. And I do, so that will help me out a little bit. One thing I do want to point out is that if you're going to see this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the board, those are actually stickers that come in the expansion. When we do our review of the expansion, we'll talk about that a little bit. But normally, this in every game would start up towards the top. But in this case, I'll move that down. Now I'll take my action. So
there you go.
What I'm going to do is retrieve my workers. And I'm going to do that by, if you look down on this little key down here, you can either pay a food or a bliss, and you gain 2 hearts, which is increases your hand size for your cards that you gather. Or you can lose a heart, or if you have 1, then you're not going to go below 1. You can lose a heart to retrieve those. What I'll do is I'll actually pay a food, and I'm going to...
What if you're the Tin Man and you have no heart?
Slide up there. Well, then I guess you can't play this game.
You kind of... I don't know if you can hear it on the camera, but you kind of sound like the Tin Man.
I do. I'm squeaking a little bit here.
Oil can.
All right, so then I'm going to roll those, and what you do when you roll your dice is you compare the total in your available workers. Those are the ones that are off the board. And in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to compare that to whatever your knowledge track is. In this case, I add 3 to that. So that's going to be 7. Now, if that ever gets to 16 or higher on the knowledge track, Your workers get too smart.
And that is not a good thing.
It's not good. You want to keep your workers
you lose a worker.
dumb in this game, because if you do that, like John said, you're going to lose a worker.
You are, and in this game, it is all about efficiency. You are racing to 10 influences, as Dean had said.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Istanbul when you're trying to get the rubies. Making little mistakes. I mean, losing a worker might not lose the whole game for you, but you lose a couple, it's going to be tough to come back from that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're playing with people who really know what they're doing. All right, so now that I've got these workers back, now Dean paid a fruit in order to go up 2 on the heart, which allows him to have 3 cards in his hand. Well, at the moment in the game, I don't care about having cards in my hand, because this says if I don't have cards, then I'm able to get these fruits whenever I go to the generator. Now, later in the game, I'm going to care about that, but I don't care right now. And I also don't mind that the penalty is losing a heart, because you only have, can't go below 1, so it's not really going to do anything. So I'm going to retrieve my workers. Now, one other thing to note is you do not have to retrieve all of your workers at one time. If you have several on the board, especially what Dean was talking about this, you may be afraid that you're going to roll and lose a worker. You might just retrieve 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to retrieve both. I'm going to lose a heart, but I don't actually. And so that means I'm going to roll, and I'll do what Dean said. I'm going to compare. I've got 4, 5, 6. I'm not even close, so I'm good.
All right, so on my turn, I am going to take my die, and I'm going to put it here in this spot to pay a brick. In a 2-player game, when you have 2 of these spaces filled up, this marketplace flips over and becomes another option of getting stars out onto the board. But then you immediately, if you've contributed to this building, you immediately get to put a star out on this card. Now, one thing we didn't mention is there are different types of spaces to place your workers. This one I just placed it in is a solid box, so that actually just stays there unless I retrieve it, which I probably won't, or if this market gets built, then that gets kicked off. The other spaces we've already used are these larger boxes, and you can put as many workers in there as you want. But the interesting type of space,
how about I hit this right here?
Okay.
So I'll go there to show, you can show that. So I'm going to lose or spend an energy to gain a gold and then go down. So there you go. Now you can tell.
All right, so now I can explain. Now I don't have the ability to do this yet, but if I wanted to, if I had an energy, then I could, just like John did, pay that. Now he has a guy there, but you see that arrow there? So that means I can bump his worker out, and then that re-rolls.
Good for me.
And then I get to take that spot and use it as normal. Unfortunately, I can't do that. So what I will do is go back up here to the farm again. Because of my special ability, I'll be able to take an extra food for being the only one there. Move up on the Wastelander track. That will now allow me to put this out here as a reminder. Now I'll be able to take an extra food from the farm whenever I take that space because I have an active Wastelander.
Yes, and one thing that I'll mention, even though I don't really want to go into final thoughts, but I definitely enjoy this game at higher player counts because there's more of that bumping out action.
Sure,
and you're getting them back, then there's not as much. But I guess at 2 players, you do get, there's that thinkiness of, do I want to go there? I really want that spot, but I don't want to bump Dean out, which is going to help him. So anyway, I saw him doing that, so I didn't want to get the penalty, which we'll talk about here in just 1 second, by not participating in building this, what do they call, monuments?
Marketplaces.
Marketplaces, way off.
And they're all thematic. We'll read that in just a minute, but they fit with the theme well.
I'm tossing my gold in there.
Hey, I never paid my brick earlier. There we go.
Dude! And you're cheating. Oh. Almost gave you back.
And every time you take a worker off, you roll it and then compare it if you need to.
Okay. And we both get to place an influence. Dun da da. I just like the sounds in my brain.
Now the spot for this one is disassemble a teddy bear shop. So they all have like this very strong
they're
dystopian theme.
Yeah, the theme is cool.
But now if we weren't able to place a star, an influence star, then it says every time that you roll a 1, you're going to lose a commodity or a resource. So had we not been able to place those out there, until we could place a star out there, we would be at a disadvantage. So anyway, that's kind of the general idea of how the game plays. Again, once you get 10 of those influence stars out on the board, if you're the first one, you're going to win the game. John, what do you think about art and components of this game?
Oh, well, art and components are great. I don't think I can ever complain about a Stonemaier Games art and components, to be real. Okay, I won't talk about the theme quite yet, but I mean, the art's beautiful. I love how it's got the Euphorian place over here. You have the blimps, Zeppelins, which I love Zeppelins. Up here, the guy's dropping down. Just, it's really great. The dice are very nice. The dice are very nice. All these little guys, I mean, it's not just standard meeples. They've got, that's cool. I don't know. No complaints. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, and the other thing I really like, the game trays, if you have a newer copy of the game, they come with the game just naturally, which is not that common, but it comes with the game trays for your dice and all of your, your tokens separated, and then all the resources. If you have the expansion, it comes with another tray that has the giant resources and other stuff. So I think I'm with John. I think the components are fantastic. Now, what about gameplay?
So you may wonder where Dean disappeared to. When I was editing this video, I noticed that my thoughts on gameplay were just a little bit jumbled, so I wanted to re-record them so you all didn't have to listen to all that. So I hadn't played Euphoria before this review. I'd played Scythed and love it. I played Viticulture, and I love those Stonemaier games. But this Stonemaier game I hadn't played because I'd heard some mixed reviews. Now, there are people who overwhelmingly enjoy this game, and that's amazing. But there's also people who think it's just okay. And after playing through it multiple times, I fall into that category. As I played through the course of the game, I just continually felt kind of underwhelmed. Not overwhelmed, I felt underwhelmed by the way the game came together. Now, there were things about it that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the fairly quick pace of play. I enjoyed looking at my workers and making sure that they weren't getting too smart, because I might end up losing one because of those. But the rolling the dice and sending your workers out, and just the way the game played, again, it was just a little underwhelming for me. There is one beef that I do have with it that just I didn't like at all about the game, and it is when you're constructing these markets here. See, the thing about this is when you don't participate in constructing the market, you don't get to put a piece of influence on there, which you shouldn't, because, hey, you didn't help constructing the market. But the game kicks you while you're down, and it's really frustrating to me, because to win the game, you put out your 10 pieces of influence, and hey, you win the game. So if you can't put an influence on this, that hurts a lot in this game. But then you not only don't get to put your influence, which again, rightfully so, but you get kicked while you're down by you actually get a penalty. Like here it says every time you lose a 1, every time you roll a 1, lose a commodity or lose a resource. And that one's not that bad, but there are some that will hose you in this game that I just feel like if I don't participate in that market and that one gets flipped over, it is very difficult to come back and actually win the game. Now the expansion Ignorance is Bliss adds some different ones, markets to it and stuff, which makes it quite a bit nicer. But man, I just feel like sometimes if you get down early, you're just running in quicksand in this game, and it's difficult to come back. So that's a huge knock on it for me. But overall, it's not a bad game. The gameplay wasn't terrible. It was just underwhelming. So let's see what Dean thinks about the gameplay.
Yeah, now we have this set up for a 2-player game, which kind of limits the spots that you have on the board. I will say, I don't think this game is excellent at the lower player counts. I think it really shines in 4, 5, 6, and even maybe even better in the 5, 6 realm, I guess, range. And that a lot of it has to do with the fact that John mentioned this earlier, but you don't really bump dice out a lot if you're playing a 2-player game. Now you do some, but not as much. But now in some of the recruit cards give you better bonuses for when your dice get bumped out or anything like that. So I will say I like this game, but I don't think it's great at 2 players. I really like it at a higher player count. And I would say if you're only going to play 2-player games, I don't think this game is worth it for you to purchase. Yeah. Now, with the expansion that adds the stickers, that helps with that a little bit. But anyway.
Yeah, and if you want to, we've done a review on the expansion. If you click the eye on the top of the screen, you can see our thoughts. And I know for me personally, it definitely is bumped up by that. Sure. So you may want to watch that. And I think it is for Dean as well. So you may want to watch that.
It definitely is. Now let's get to our final ratings on this. Now for me, I really do enjoy this game. I like that you have to pay attention to what the other players are doing. There is a decent amount of player interaction in this game, and you don't really get that in a lot of dice placement, worker placement. This is a Euro game, right? It's not super thematic. There's funny theme in the cards and stuff like that. But
it's more thematic than a lot of Euro games.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But it also has a higher player interaction than a lot of Euros do, which I quite enjoy that. So for me, I do enjoy this, and I give this game a 7. It's not one that I'm going to often turn down. Now, if it's just a 2-player game, it's lower than that. It's in the 6 range somewhere, but in a higher player count, it's a 7. I really enjoy this one.
Yeah, so I've already given you kind of my reasons why a few of my reasons why I didn't really love it. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I'll play it maybe. I mean, if I'm really in the mood for it, that's where I'll play it. And again, I will say that my rating is going to go up based on the expansion for sure. But the base game is beautiful. The art's fantastic. It's not a bad game by any stretch, but it's just it's a little meh for me. All right, so those are our thoughts and our ratings on Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. Dean gave it a 7 out of 10. I gave it a 6 out of 10. And if you'd like to see our video on the expansion Ignorance is Bliss, click on the eye like we mentioned earlier, or just on YouTube, just search MeepleTown Ignorance is Bliss or something like that. You should be able to find it. But I will say, spoiler alert, our ratings did go up based on this. And for me personally, it's a must-have for me to really want to play this game. But it is a nice expansion. So with that being said, we want to thank you all for watching this video, and thanks for coming down to MeepleTown.
Thanks for joining us, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at MeepleTown Games, and connect with us on the MeepleTown Guild number 3407 at BoardGameGeek.com, and also subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. And until next time, thanks for coming down to MeepleTown.